Well, good afternoon, all. My name is Diane Seider. I've been working here at Turnkey now for 10 years this fall. Bill Schultz is here with me. He has been with Turnkey now three and a half. Yeah. So he and I are going to present the procure-to-pay. So in our scenario, so we're going to do an interactive demo. And so in this demo, let me set up the storyline. I am in here as a user I'm not a, well, I am a GP user. Let's say I'm the director or the VP of accounting or the CFO. So I have view-only rights in GP, but I am going to create a requisition that then Bill is going to approve, and so we're going to kind of go back and forth with this. So we have workflow turned on. We're going to look at that.
Yeah, the point is to help you understand what it looks like to create a requisition, have it go through workflow, turn that into a PO, take the PO, receive against it, then we'll go into actually paying the invoice. There'll be another workflow involved in that. So we'll take you all the way from creating the original requisition to paying that bill, paying that vendor, and closing the process out.
Right. And so, and we can talk about, reports and different pieces of information as we go through the process. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to create a requisition. Yep. So I am on my home page. You notice here in GP, I have my procurement section turned on. So if I go up to, let me get this out of the way for a moment. Yeah, it won't drag. Okay. So I've got procurement turned on my home page. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to see all of my purchasing items that are out here. So I have some requisitions that I had previously created. I can see that they have been completed. This one's been recalled. This one's been saved but not yet submitted. So we have several out here. I will see as I walk through and enter a purchase requisition, I'll see if something's been ready for, so if Bill has approved it, it will show up in the ready for purchase box. If Bill rejects it for whatever reason, it will show up here. So it will tell me what's been going on. And then I can also turn on my workflow tasks under my to-do list. So if I click on the pencil here, you notice that once workflow is turned on in GP, then you're able to add workflow tasks and notifications to your home page. As well as up here at the customize this page, I have my procurement section turned on. So I'm going to click on enter a purchase requisition, and I'm going to create a new one here. So as I'm creating the requisition, there are several fields that have to be filled in. You notice several fields here.
They don't show that. They will once you start.
All right. I'll have asterisks here in a moment. All right. So then I'll come down here to my line. No.
When you put a line item in.
Oh, that's one. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pick an item. Okay. Now you notice I have for site ID and for vendor ID, I have asterisks. So I know that those are required fields I must fill in, along with over here shipping method and ship to address.
So one thing I will point out to those fields, they're required in order to pass this requisition to a purchase order.
Yep.
So to create the purchase order from the requisition, you've got to have those fields completed, along with the account number, the account distribution. Those are actually the 5 required fields. But the user who's creating the requisition may or may not know all that stuff, and that's okay. It can go through the workflow without having those filled in, and they can be filled in later by a later person in the transaction. But before you actually create the purchase order, you will want to fill all 5 of those in with valid data so that the purchase order will set up correctly.
I'm going to pick my site ID. I will pick my vendor.
No.
Oh.
Wrong vendor. You want to do that P-man stuff.
Oh,
So you know
yeah,
how it
right,
works.
the top one.
Yep, go on. There we go.
Okay. And then I will tab through. Right now, this is going to hit this particular GL account, which I'm fine with. Shipping method, I will pick overnight because I need this right away. You notice the ship to address down here will populate from the site ID I've selected above. And then I need a quantity.
Now, for our example today, we have to have at least $1,000 because our requisition workflow kicks off only everything over $1,000, a requisition over $1,000.
Yeah, that brings up a good point. So here, I'll show you really quick on the administration page where we have our workflow. Set up. So you notice right now I've got requisition workflow turned on, and it's set to active, and it is a requisition. So I need approval on any requisitions, like Bill said, over $1,000. The other workflow we're going to use today that's turned on is the payables check batch. We have a workflow turned on so that when we go to cut checks, somebody has to approve that batch before we can actually print the checks. So those are the 2 that we're looking at today. All right, so my purchase requisition is over the $1,000 limit. So at this point, I need to submit. So I'm going to click on the submit button. I can type in a comment. If I want, and I'll hit submit.
Now with workflow, you can have emails turned on. We're not going to look at emails today, but you can have emails turned on so that the emails are sent out automatically. I would get a notification by email saying that Diane has submitted a requisition to me. Today we're going to look at just the interface within GP. I'm not going to go drive over to emails. But so here we are on my home screen. I'm going to refresh my home screen because I probably have a task now. It shows right on my home screen under my to-dos, purchase requisition approval needed. So now I know that there's one that I've got to go out and approve. I can also get there by going to the purchasing module. I always go to the purchasing pane. I like working off purchasing pane. And I could go to purchase requisitions here, and I can pull up one at a time. Or I can use a navigation list, which we're going to use today. And we're going to look at purchase requisitions pending approval. And so this will show really kind of a work list for me, everything that's in process that I need to work on. So if there were multiple people sending me requisitions, I could deal with them all at one time from one screen. So it'll show up here in just a minute. All right. Batches. No, why is it doing this? I clicked the wrong button. Purchasing batches requesting approval. Requisitions pending approval. All right. I'm sorry. I clicked the wrong thing. All right, here we go. So here's my purchase order that Diane has submitted to me. I can open it from here. I just double click on it. It'll open the rec up. And I can look at the detail. I can say, yeah, that quantity looks good. The Shipping method's fine. If I notice there's anything missing, I could fill those fields in from here. I could approve it from here, or I can just simply select that item, and right at the top menu bar, screen, I can go up here and say approve, or I can reject it. If I don't like it for some reason, I can reject it back to Diane and give her some more information. But in this case, I'm going to click approve. I can say, Diane, purchase approved. And then click approve. So now if I refresh my screen, you'll see that item's gone. So I've cleared that item from my work list. So now I put it back into Diane's court for her to work on.
All right, so now we're back at my desk, and lo and behold, here in my procurement section, I have one requisition that is ready for purchase, so that means it's been approved. So I'll just click on it from here. You notice it's loading. It's using the same navigation list. Well, not the same list, but it's using the navigation screen that Bill used. So 23. So I'm going to check this. And again, I can double click on it if I want to open it. But since I'm the one that created it, I know what's involved here. So I'm just going to check the box, and I'm going to click purchase. What this is doing is it's going to create a PO. So the requisition's been approved. We're creating the PO that will then get sent over to the vendor so that they can ship us our product.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my PO. You notice, and so now if I don't have refresh.
Oh, yeah.
So now you notice my ready for purchase button is back to 0. So I know that I've taken care of whatever it is, and it shows up here as completed. Workflow status completed.
Okay, so now we have a completed purchase order. We've shipped that off to the vendor. They're going to go out and ship some product to us.
Right.
And now we're at the receiving desk. And so I've stepped into the role of the receiving clerk in the warehouse, and I'm going to have to receive this item against that purchase order. So I'm going to again go to my purchasing pane.
Because we're running a two-man show here. So our division of duties is
Yes, we wear a lot of hats.
Right, we do. We bounce back and forth.
All right, so I'm going to go to receiving transaction entry. And on here, I'm going to select shipment/invoice because I'm going to not only receive the item, but I'm going to go ahead and set the invoice up in payables at the same time. If you have a receiving clerk and an AP clerk, and they're going to do, you're going to keep some separation of duties, then you might have the receiving person just simply do a shipment. They receive the good, and then the person up in accounting would then come along and enter an invoice and match it to that receipt. In this case, we're going to do both of them at the same time. So we'll do shipment and invoice. I'm going to click in receipt number. It will auto-assign a receipt number. I'm going to go ahead and give it a vendor document number, and I'm just going to say 9/14, today's date, as the document number. We'll use that when we set it. Needs it just like in your payables management where you need an invoice number. You've got to have an invoice number before it'll let you process. I'll go pick that vendor. So there's my vendor that we sent the PO to. And then I can come down here and I can do auto receive. Although I'll be honest with you, we've been having some trouble with auto receive on this machine. So we're not going to do that today. We're just going to go ahead and fill in the item. But it says PO 2112. And so I'll go down here and I'll pick PO 2112. And the item that's on that PO, 1016. So you saw I clicked the magnifying glass and it brought up the item. And it shows right there that I had ordered 1,000 of them at $15, $15,000. If I needed to change the quantity, I could. If I only got 500 of them today, I could change that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to fill in the payment terms.
Because it didn't default in from this particular vendor. So
Right. Normally that would default
Normally it
in.
would.
Yeah. So we'll pick it as net 30. So we've now set up this receipt and invoice all in one screen. So I could assign this to a batch if I want and post the batch, and I can do a number of receipts all in a big batch. Today I'm just going to go ahead and post that one item. So I'm going to hit post. And then when I close the screen out, it'll print my reports. So our receiving posting journal, we'll look at that one just quickly. We won't want to look at this other detail screens. We don't need those. And so here's your posting journal. And it shows that I purchased $15,000 of this item number 1016 down here, 1,000 of them for $15,000. So we're complete on the purchase now. So now we've purchased it. Okay, it's in my accounts payable. I've received the item in. I've created an invoice. It's sitting in AP, and I need to pay the vendor. All right. So of course, obviously, you usually will manage your invoices, and you have a check run every week or twice a month or whatever it is. But today we're going to just have a check run just for this one vendor. So I'm going to go into select checks. I'm going to create a batch. I can type, add the batch. It wants me to have the right checkbook selected, so that's the checkbook I'm going to issue this check out of. I'll save my batch. Now, I could run this for all vendors, but today, just for purposes of this demo, I'm just going to pick that one vendor. We don't want to get a bunch of transactions in here. We're going to just get the one transaction that we just received. And now, so I'm going to build my batch. And it's going to show that I've got $15,000 in my batch total up here. So it's found that invoice and said, yep, I need to pay this. If I kind of forget about submitting, and I forget that I've got workflow turned on, and say, I'm going to go ahead and just print that check. So I select print checks right here. It's going to tell me, no, documents got to be submitted for approval first. So it's going to take me right to that warning screen and make sure that I don't do that by mistake. So I'm going to clear this out because we're going to have to go over to the batch screen in order to submit this to Diane for approval. So I'm going to close my payables checks out. I'll go to batches. I'll find that check batch I just created, BS demo. Notice it said status was not submitted. And I can submit this to Diane for approval. It's got one item in it for $15,000, so I know it's got what I want in there. I've submitted it. Diane, please approve check. And submit. And so now I've sent it off to her, and I'll turn this back over to her to take the next step.
So something to note, when we are typing in those comments really show in the email workflow. So that would be a part of the email that we would see.
We can also see them in the workflow history.
Yes.
In GP. Now you got a batch.
Yeah, so now I've refreshed my home screen, and now I see down here I have a batch. It tells me BS demo batch. So I can click on it here. I can see that it's one check for $15,000. If I want, I can, print the edit list. Let's say I just want to see what Bill's cutting checks for here. Yeah. So here's the check he's going to cut.
$15,000.
$15,000. Yep. That's what we expected.
Show them history.
Yep. So here, if I go to view history before I post it, here's where I will see Bill's message to me.
You can see that the workflow has been kicked off. The little check mark says it's submitted, but it's still pending. You'll get a different visual when it's completed.
So for me to approve this, I'll go to workflow, and here again I have the option to reject, or I can delegate, and we'll talk about delegate here in a moment after we walk through the rest of this process. But for now, I'll click approve, and I'm not going to do a comment this time.
Oh, you didn't say approved. You said cancel.
I didn't say. Oh.
Yeah, you did.
All right, all right.
You did approved.
Approve.
There you go. And then say approve.
Oh, yeah, I did hit cancel.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now I've done my job and I've approved.
Yeah.
So we're hopping back over to Bill's.
So now I can come along and I can create that check. I couldn't print the check earlier because it wasn't approved yet, but now that it's approved, I can go in and I'm going to print my check. It's got my check number, check date. All I do is just hit print. Should let that open. Anyway, so there's my check, and it's complete. So I printed my check. I closed the posting box. I should have left it open, so I go ahead and post that on through just to finish the process. It's printed now. I'm going to post it. We don't need screens. And with that, we're done. It's been paid, fully paid.
So that's a walkthrough of the entire procure-to-pay process. So now I want to circle back for a minute and talk a little bit more about the workflow and some of the other functions and features that you can turn on with the workflow. So I'm going to hop back here to the administration page. And I'm going to come down here to workflow maintenance. So you noticed one of the options in the drop-down box when Bill and I were approving or rejecting the workflows, the different documents, was delegate. And so you can set up on these workflows various delegations where if somebody is out of the office, you know, if the document doesn't get approved within, let's say, 8 hours, then it will delegate. It will go to the next person on the list so that, you know, if people are out of the office on a vacation or whatever, workflow can still function and you know, it's not a big bottleneck.
Yeah, and the delegate button also gives you the ability as an approver to say, you know what, I've seen this request for this check. It's $15,000. I know it's okay, but I'm going to go ahead and send this on to somebody else to have them look at it as well because it's a big check. It's out of the ordinary, and I want the treasurer to see it. So I'm going to delegate to him and let him do the final approval. So that gives you the ability to add another person to the process if you want.
Yep. So here's where we can say escalate to next approver, and then we can, you know, pick people.
Yeah, that's where the system is working for you.
Right.
It's doing it automatically in the background. Okay.
So does anybody have any questions on anything we've walked through? I know it's kind of hard to tell. I can't see people raising their hands this time like normal. So
hey,
I'll
Diane.
wait for Brad. Yeah.
It's Brad here. We don't have any questions submitted yet for this topic, but if anybody does have questions that come up, they can also feel free to submit them later and we'll get them answered at the end Q&A.
Right, absolutely. So, so the workflow, obviously, on the purchasing side, you know, as you can see, you've got requisition approval, purchase order approvals. You can do vendor, you know, if somebody adds a new vendor, that could go through a workflow, as well as payable checks and payable invoices, batches.
Right. That's all on the purchasing side.
Yep. So you can also, on the financial side, you have general ledger batch approval. On the sales side, you've got receivables batch approval. On the project side, if you're using project, you've got expense reports and timesheet approvals. So this is one of the areas in GP as they come out with new versions of GP. This is one of the areas where they're really investing and kind of building out, because each release comes with new workflows that they tend to have turned on.
Matter of fact, this is GP 2015. 2016 has even more
Right.
transaction workflows that you can set up than what we're showing here today.